Hi, Rashmi, do you want to start?
5 minutes, Santosh, we'll start.
Sure.
I think we can begin. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of ISOLA Bangalore chapter, I welcome you all on day 2 of Thesis Open Day, version 6. In today's session, we'll have a presentation on wildlife habitat. We have with us the panelist for today is Mangesh sir. Mangesh sir is an architect by profession and has over 27 years of varied experience in the field of architecture and landscape architecture, planning and design. He did his undergraduation from Goa School of Architecture and Masters in Landscape from School of Planning and Architecture, New Delhi, under the guidance and mentoring of late Professor Mohammad Shahir. He has worked on various prestigious assignments in the area of site planning and environmental impact assessment. He's a practicing architect based in Goa with several initiatives on parallel lines on architects' social responsibilities in architecture profession, architecture education, and professional practices codes in India. He is also a fellow member of ISOLA India and an ex-member of National Executive Council at India Society of Landscape Architects and has been associated with ISOLA for the last 16 years, with key responsibilities at various initiatives at National Conference of ISOLA, as held in Goa on climate change in 2017 and 11. He is also a chairman of Real Estate and Housing Committee at Goa Chamber of Commerce and Industry, involved with formulation of RERA regulations in Goa. Welcome you, sir. Glad to have you on board. Our next panelist is Saurav Pople. Saurav Pople, sir, teaches at School of Planning and Architecture, Bhopal. He is interested in contemporary imagination of landscape in design and its interpretation, as well as the ways in which landscape thinking blurs disciplinary and sectoral boundaries. His research has focused on complex, contested, and obscure ways in which landscape shapes cultures and is shaped by people. His teaching, research, and writing pertains to the theme of sustainability, urbanism, design, aesthetics, resource use, as well as social transition towards resilient through stakeholder negotiation and mutuality. Both the session, welcome on board, sir. Both the sessions, yesterday's and today, has been moderated by Shantesh. Shantesh is a landscape urbanist and a partner at Reading Ground. He's practicing in the domain of landscape design and ecological planning. His interest lies in exploring the relationship between subtle aspects of design and living experience. Shantesh also has a podcast called 13, where they oscillate between philosophy, ontology, and human behavior. Welcome, Shantesh. I would also like to welcome our participants, Kritika Shankar, Manju Rajiv Kanchan, Rini Jariwala, and a warm welcome to all the audience who have logged in through Zoom as well as watching on YouTube Live. Shantesh, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rashmi. Thank you all for joining in. And yesterday we had an extremely intriguing session. Yesterday's session was called Landscape Revival, where Abhinaya, Prachita, and Prasanna presented. Just to quickly recap from there, and then to continue into today's session, it was quite intriguing to see even landscape revival being looked at from different perspectives, from social, ecological, historical and heritage, spatial, cultural, and then even from planning point of view, how landscape could become an integral part of design. It was quite refreshing to see these different points of views, these different thought-provoking ideas that each one of them brought to the table. And today's session, which is wildlife habitat, which I'm expecting it to be wild and is going to be much more intriguing, I believe. I've gone through the content that each of them have submitted, and I'm really looking forward for them. Starting with the first presenter for the day, Kritika Shankar. Kritika has graduated from SPA Vijayawada and done her master's in landscape architecture. Her thesis is titled Restoration of an Urban Wildlife Habitat, a case of Mangalvanam Bird Sanctuary in Cochin City. Over to you. Before I hand over, I also request everybody to please be muted if you've joined in and by mistake without knowing if you're on unmute, please mute yourself. If you have any questions pertaining to any particular presentation, please type that into the chat box. Each presenter will get approximately 20 minutes and I'll be the timekeeper. So over to you, Kritika.
Thank you, sir. Good evening, sirs, and good evening, ma'am. Good evening to all. So my name is Kritika, and my thesis, which is titled Restoration of an Urban Wildlife Habitat, was done by me as a part of my academics over a period of 6 months in 2021. And I was guided by Architect Kapil Natwadkar. So in order to, before starting my presentation, I would like to switch off my video in order to avoid lags. Can I start?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you. My thesis is titled Restoration of an Urban Wildlife Habitat, a case of Mangalvanam Bird Sanctuary in Cochin City. I would like to start my presentation with a quote from Christina Hill. Projects in urban design, architecture, and landscape architecture that aren't made with an understanding of flow and connectivity are destined to fail. Conserving urban wildlife habitats and re-establishing their connectivity is essential in today's rapidly urbanizing world. Going on to what my thesis exactly aims at is to restore an urban wildlife habitat called Mangalavanam, which is in the verge of rapid destruction from the surrounding urban pressure. And it is located on the heart of an urban agglomeration of Cochin, and then extend the habitat into the surrounding 167 acres of land owned by the government. But why Cochin? The city of Cochin is located in the tidal creek as separate islands, and it has a rural-urban continuum. We can see the Google Maps of Cochin, where the islands which are connected by the arterial ways have a predominantly urban character, and other smaller which are accessed by boats and other means have predominantly rural character. The site chosen Mangalavanam and the surrounding open space is the only existing lung space of Cochin City as of now, which is connected to the mainland. And it is surrounded by various public and private entities. And the site is also under rapid real estate pressure due to its prime location. This is a land use map of Cochin Municipal Corporation area, which indicates that the site is a wetland and it has few industrial areas too. But I had to go through the master plan of this same site in 2031 and was shocked to see that the region is indicated as a residential zone, which means that the eco-fragile nature of the site wasn't considered. Thus, conserving this particular region is very important. Over years, we can see the rapid development which has happened around the site. And in 1985, this portion was belonging to the Vembanad wetlands, which is the Ramsar site. And the site was actually reclaimed from the lake that now it is turned into the site that we see now.
Kritika, I'm interrupting you, but there is a gap in your audio. We are losing your voice in between.
So am I audible now?
You are audible, but it just there are interruptions. You're audible. Go ahead.
Going on to the methodology of the site, the methodology says that the entire study was categorized in various levels, starting from the history, site inventory, history, legal aspects, urbanization, physiography, ecology, and movement, from which I came into the design evolution, life cycle analysis, agroecological cycles, tidal cycles, and precipitation cycles were studied upon to reach the concept and the final master plan. We can see the location of the site in the entire Cochin Municipal Corporation area, and it is located in the Ward 68. Going on to the site inventory, we can see that this particular region marked by red dots is the actual area of Mangalvanam, which is actually a bird sanctuary. It is the smallest bird sanctuary in Kerala, which has an area of about 6.8 acres. Coming on to the total site details, there are three canals. This is one of the canal, the second one and third one. They are connected to the Vembanad Lake, and these tidal canals experience tidal actions and they are semi-diurnal. That is, there are 2 tidal spikes in a day. Then coming on to the other site features, you can see that there is an old railway station complex in the site, which is the first railway station in Kerala, and the site is abandoned. So in 2004, it was started as a bird sanctuary, but now the birds are declining and the visitors have reduced. And it is under the forest department. We can see the entire site of Mangalavanam and the urban context surrounding it. These are the various layers by which the study was done. From the historical analysis of the site, it was inferred that Mangalvanam was taken by the Forest Department in 2004 after the abandoned railway station was left undisturbed and the nature took over. A study on legal aspects gives us the CRZ boundaries of the site and the ecologically sensitive zone as marked by the National Center for Earth Sciences. A study on urbanization shows that the site is under rapid urbanization, and it shows the extent of buildings and the typology around the site. And this shows the extent of urbanization in entire Cochin Municipal Corporation area from the year 1990 to 2017. Coming on to the physiography, it was derived that the site is unaffected by floods, and it lies in the lowest terrain, and the type of the soil found was coastal alluvium. Further, hydrology and topography maps were plotted. Coming on to the movement and the activity study, it was found that the site context is active at all times, and the surrounding area is very active, and there is noise emission too. Ecology was analyzed at various levels, at the regional level, city and site level. Coming on to the detailed site level, the entire flora and fauna were plotted. Dry grasses, thick woody trees and mangroves are the major vegetation. Coming on to the flora of the site, it was obtained from a record by Salim Ali Institute. So it says that there are water birds, wetland dependent birds, understory birds, woodland dependent birds, open habitat birds, and raptorial birds. And a major study of them under each of the categories were done. But this alone does not make it all, because everything is interrelated. Mammals and fishes were also analyzed in the same manner, based on their feeding and other characteristics. It is with this which helped me derive the preliminary concept of identifying the patches and corridors of entire Cochin city, and connecting the blue and the green corridors together to identify the habitat specific to each of the species. For this, then I derived into the mosaic approach in landscape planning. So for deriving this particular concept, I had to go through the maps prepared by Interact Bio, in which the major patches and corridors of Cochin Municipal Corporation area were marked. In this, it is said that those patches which are connected by 100 or less than 100 meters are said to be connected and helps in the movement of urban fauna. So two major criteria were chosen, like patch connectivity and habitat suitability index. Since it was difficult to do habitat suitability index for each of the species, major habitats preferred by them were studied. This helped me arrive at the mosaic approach in landscape planning, in which it is a species-specific approach in which the requirements of each of the species is analyzed. For this, I had to go through the entire bird list of Mangalvanam inhabiting and categorize them into local migrants or winter migrants or residents, their characteristics, whether they are shy birds or where they are adapted to human presence, their height preferences, since there are lots of tall buildings around, their feeding characteristics, breeding characteristics, habitat preferences, change in abundance, and the seasons they are seen in this particular region, not only in this site, but around the region in Ernakulam and Cochin. Further, issues were analyzed. Issues were categorized into general issues and ecological issues, and each of them were further divided into macro level, site level, and micro level issues. Site level and micro level issues were of more focus because those are the ones where we can do proper landscape interventions to solve them. Ecological issues were of more importance, and it was found in the micro level that crowning of exotic trees over the pool reduces the mangrove deaths, and which eventually reduces the bird feeding habitats. Also, a lot of pollution activities happening around closes the pneumatophores of the mangroves, which hampers their growth. These were the issues analyzed at micro levels. Similarly, issues at all levels were analyzed. Going on to the issues, impact, reasons, and interventions at site level, each of the issues were analyzed to reach the proper design interventions. So the major issues analyzed were tidal lake pollution, which affects the species, rapid encroachment by the buildings around, decrease in water spread area, causing less species, decrease in the number of resident birds, oil deposits in the water, waste dumping in and around the region, spread of invasive weeds, and a lot of noise pollution in and around the site. It was also found that the abandoned site of the railway station was cement bags were dumped over, which increased the siltation in the water body. After this, the strategies were worked out. 5 strategies were identified: water quality management strategy, vegetation management strategy, built context management strategy, habitat management strategy, and the recreation layer was added at last. First, coming on to the first one called water quality improvement strategy, is to first treat the railway canal before the water enters into the site. Since the sources of pollution were identified and the techniques which can improve the water quality were further focused on. The next step was to interconnect the tidal canals together, which keeps the water moving at all seasons. And it also maintains the movement of fishes and invertebrates throughout. Also, we know that fishes are a nursery, the mangroves are a nursery for the fishes. So this will help in active movement of water and other organisms too. Next, going on to the vegetation management strategy is to connect the green corridors and manage the flora of the site in order to prevent invasive species to grow on. Planting more native species and analyzing the plant palette to be followed in the site were important. Also, we had to focus on details like making a clear water space so that it is visible for the migrant water birds. Coming on to the built context management, it was analyzed to understand that some of the buildings were encroached in the area where the National Center for Earth Sciences had marked as ecologically sensitive region. So those buildings are to be removed. Further, the buildings which fell into the CRZ zone were also removed. And in order to prevent the noise, smaller interventions had to be followed. Coming on to the habitat management strategy, our aim was to create a mosaic of habitat for the wild, stepping stones, and core habitat islands. The breeding, feeding, flight height were analyzed for a variety of birds, which laid the basis for designing the macro and the micro habitats. In this image, we can see the existing core habitat of Mangalavanam and the mangroves, and indicated along with the possible emergent habitats in future. Here, after understanding the habitat requirements of a wide variety of birds, the entire site was divided into open water habitat zone, open habitat zones, wetland habitat zones, and woodland habitat zones. Further, microhabitats were designed for the different variety of species, different categories of species that we have chosen. Coming on to the master plan of the site, it was majorly detailed with 3 zones. The recreation development was the last layer to be added, and the circulation pattern indicates the trails for various kinds of users. We have various kinds of users like local people, the tourist who wants to visit the site, the forest department, and the researchers, and the various students of schools and colleges. Coming on to this zone 1, that is open habitat zone. This is mainly for the open habitat birds inhabiting the area. Microhabitats were designed for them, like mud walls for nesting, and rock crevices were designed considering their life cycle. Here we can see that the major road called Goshri Chatayat Road cuts the region into 2. So in order to encourage the species movement from one place to another, trees with spread canopy like rain trees were planted on the site, so that there is a canopy overlap and species can move from one place to another. Further interventions like creating concealed pathways for people and open habitats for the birds. Stormwater management was further worked on so that water gets filtered through filter strips before falling into the main water body. The second zone 2 was water treatment zone. It was done, the water treatment was mainly done using phytoremediation and weather and various other nature-based techniques. Since this is the core habitat and the habitat for some of the migratory species which are very shy in character and resident waterfowls, micro interventions were made, like heronries. Heronries are group nesting for certain birds like water cormorants. So this particular site was once known as an international bird area due to the presence of many heronries, but now it is not seen. So this particular arrow shows the movement of water. The sewage waters from the municipality enters into an aerobic pond. From there, it is taken into a constructed wetlands. The water is retained for 24 hours before flowing them into the main tidal pool. This will create a filtration for the sewage water. For other waters entering from the Vembanad Lake, there is another degree of filtration. Further, it was found that during rainy seasons, many of the birds lose their nests because it is located near the sites. So some of the edge supports were designed and for them. Further design interventions, we can see here that the concrete edges were removed to make it more natural edges, so that there is an active water flow even during low tide seasons. Going on to the third zone, which is a design garden, 17 species of butterflies inhabiting the site. The host species were studied, selected, and used in the planting pattern. So coming on to the butterfly habitat, they require areas which are sunlit for around 7 to 8 hours in a day. So some of the open habitats were chosen for them. Further, microhabitat development included creation of mud pools and sand beds. which sand beds with salt, so which are required to satisfy their life cycle requirements. Butterflies cannot drink directly from the water body, and mud pools will enable them for all their life cycle processes.
You have about a minute left.
Yes, sir.
You have about a minute left.
These interventions, if done, will restore the urban habitat and convert it into a heaven for a wide variety of species as seen here. Thank you. And I would like to thank my guide, architect Kapil Natwadkar, and other faculty at SPED, and the entire team of Kerala Forest Department, including Kerala Forest Research Institute in Trichy, for their support and constructive criticism, which helped me in successful completion of my thesis. As many of the data that I had used in the process were analyzed from their initial studies. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kritika. It was quite a sensitive approach towards the entire presentation that you took and took us through. And what I really liked was the urban and wildlife coexistence, something that you have tried to bring that and restore. Was very intriguing. Thank you so much. Moving forward, we have the next presenter, Manju Rajiv Kanchan. Manju has graduated from SPA Vijayawada and done her master's in landscape architecture. Her thesis is titled "The Somber Case of an Odd Triad Between Dolphin Man and Zoonosis." In the current light of the pandemic, I think this is something which we have to carefully listen to. So if you could stop sharing, Kritika, then Manju can come online. Yeah, thanks. Over to you.
Good evening. Am I audible and is my video visible?
Yes.
All right. So just to ensure that the presentation will run smooth, I'll be switching off my video and I'll be switching it on post the presentation. Is my screen visible?
Yes.
Yes. All right.
Yeah, you can go into the presentation mode.
Yes. Okay. So, quote, sometimes not intervening is also landscape architecture. At times, the solution to tackling multiple challenges in a site lie in finding the solution to perhaps just one, unquote, author. Respected moderator, panel members, fellow participants, and all those attending this forum session, a warm welcome. I'm Manju Rajiv Kanchan, a postgraduate student from the Department of Landscape Architecture at the School of Planning and Architecture, Vijayawada. Dolphin, man, and zoonosis. Three important stakeholders, but each totally different from the other. So, a quick question before moving forward. How many of us are aware that the Gangetic river dolphin is the national aquatic animal of India? In my case, it was a chance encounter as I came across this exciting piece of information while browsing for a potential thesis project site. Gangetic river dolphins and zoonosis. How are they linked? More importantly, how does Ganga riverfront development come into the picture here? Well, with this, I'm going to throw in another point of emphasis into the concoction, that is, save the Gangetic dolphins to prevent another pandemic. Why? Because everything is connected. Well, if you all have been with me till now, and if I've managed to intrigue at least some of you, then without further ado, I present before you all my thesis proposal titled "The Somber Case of an Odd Triad Dolphin, Man and Zoonosis," done under the guidance of my professor, Dr. Meenakshi Jain, who's also the director of School of Planning and Architecture, Vijayawada. Now, based on my dissertation titled "The Role of Landscape Architecture in Curbing Zoonosis, Developing Design Framework and Approach," and a sudden attraction for the Gangetic dolphins is how I narrowed upon Vikramshila Gangetic Dolphin Sanctuary as my proposed site extent. The idea of One Health has now become more important than ever before as we traverse through a global pandemic. Now, if I draw a parallel between each of the three in this triad, with the One Health diagram recognized by WHO, each of these symbolize at least one of the three circles in the Venn diagram. Likewise, pandemics, epidemics, and plagues are not a novel concept, for they've always been around since time immemorial. But why this is becoming a predominant grievance to address is because the fine line that separates the sustenance microbial processes within the natural landscape reservoirs is now slowly spilling over into the human community through aggravated anthropogenic activities such as agriculture, deforestation, habitat fragmentation, etc., which is why it has now become more important than ever before to design zoonotically resilient blue-green infrastructure landscapes. So the obvious questions now that would be arising here would be these. But the most important of all would be, how do we protect the purity of Ganga River for generations to come? Well, I soon realized the answer to that, or rather the secret to that, lies in the preservation of the Gangetic dolphin count. How so? Well, in order to answer these questions, I carried out in-depth precedent studies in a very strategic fashion, and that helped me coin two core understandings. Tier 1 learning, things always happen for a reason. Tier 2 learning, healthy landscapes imply resilient species. Now, armed with this prerequisites, the next obvious move would be to step into Vikramshila Gangetic Dolphin Sanctuary, the only notified riverine sanctuary in India as per Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 for the Gangetic dolphins. It also occupies an IUCN Category 4 protected status, as well as being an important bird area site in India. It's also the only notified riverine sanctuary for dolphins, river dolphins, or Gangetic dolphins within the entire South Asia as well. Now, situated in Bhagalpur district of Bihar, India, a wide and deep river stretch, in addition to a constantly changing river platform and expanse due to an altering river geomorphology, generates a diversity of microhabitats, and this is exactly why there is a rich species biodiversity in the region as well. Now, despite all the factors of praise, all is not well in the paradise. Why? Mainly because there are a series of issues of multiple natural and anthropogenic order being faced by this particular region as well. But for the ease of presentation, it has been condensed to some core factors which can be seen here. Now, in order to understand the root of these issues, it is imperative to rewind back 200 years to the origin of Ganga in Bihar. What was once a small and narrow stream over the course of years slowly increased in size upon receiving water influx from numerous other rivers. The stretch of Ganga that is flowing through Vikramshila Gangetic Dolphin Sanctuary is situated such that it adopts a braided river character, a fluid landscape, hence the ecological sensitivity and fragility. For the health of a braided river is dependent on how well the sustenance processes, namely abrasion, aggradation, erosion, and siltation take place. Now, landscapes like diaras, thals, and shores are a result of a series of these processes, and their constant state of flux imply a healthy riverine system. Any attempt at intervention without any manner of ecological consideration will only create an imbalance in this equilibrium, thereby initiating a domino effect through the issues that we had seen earlier. Now, amidst this myriad of sensitivities lie our Gangetic dolphins, sentient gentle beings who are one among the key indicator species of Gangetic river health. Now, what might appear as majorly solitary species are in reality keenly interspersed with other key indicator and endemic species. Now, the solution here might seem as obvious as just rescuing the dolphin habitat alone. But what needs to be understood here is that the sustenance of all the species that calls this sanctuary a home are an outcome of the natural working of the braided river ecosystems. So now I again pose the question here, that is the triad dolphin, man, and zoonosis related? I would say pretty much. This is a mind map that was conceived during my design process, linking the triad man, zoonosis, and dolphins in order to relate to the triad again. Therefore, the idea that I propose here is based on two assumptions. To start with, the issues that the site faces are an outcome of factors that occur both upstream and downstream Ganga. Hence, for this outside of the site limits as well. Therefore, this proposal targets the holistic revitalization of the region to support the key indicator species, as this will indirectly help to ensure a steady dolphin count. So I propose the broad concept of reviving, comprising the 3 R's: renaturalization, revive plus recover, and rediscover, which itself aligns with the vision of NMCG for Ganga River as a whole. Now, each R addresses a broader goal with a micro-level design strategy, a comprehensive landscape development master plan based on this concept, along with a design program that decides the permissible and proposed activities within the sanctuary extent has been conceived. Now, to start with, renaturalization. Renaturalization focuses on restoring the equilibrium associated with the natural ecological processes, basically a live and let live approach. This is achieved via restoring and daylighting the natural hydrological connections. Natural and hydrological connections to the main river channel, followed by the riverbed naturalization to help bring back the natural fluvial dynamicity. Now, as you can see here, the 4 riverbed naturalization points that have been marked have been taken up based on the bathymetry analysis that was carried out. However, for the entire river stretch that flows through the sanctuary extent, this process needs to be applied. The next one would be applying or designating an active floodplain region, followed by the conservation, preservation, and diversification of the natural mid-channel islands or the DRR lands. Revive and recover is all about remediating both land and water to improve the overall river health and therefore the quality of human and faunal life in the region. This is through installing trash boom barriers at meeting points of the rivers into the main river channel in order to counter the issue of solid waste accumulation, remediation landscapes to counter issues like arsenic and fluoride poisoning, a revamped agro-site zoning that is considerate of the site ecological sensitivities, no fishing zones designated, and natural hatchery ponds on the DRRs, soil erosion control and bank stabilization strategies, establishing riparian corridors and subtle faunal habitat modifications for the key indicator species like smooth-coated otters, freshwater turtles, etc. Rediscover focuses on presenting the natural bounty of the region in a different light that is not only ecologically sensitive, but also ensures that the riparian rights of the humans are not being compromised. The strategies include modified ghats design, eco-sensitive nature trails and floating footbridges, ferry points, watchtowers, signages, and wayfinding as part of the species awareness program. Now, with respect to zoonotic resilience, a scientific design-oriented approach to controlling prevalent zoonosis in the region through strategic planting and interventions such as urban forests, flower fields, pollinator hotels, etc., has been conceived based on 2 core concepts. The first one being zooprophylacsis, that is introducing buffer faunal species as alternate meal option for the mosquitoes instead of humans. And secondly, introducing floral species with higher sugar level content, as mosquitoes are known to be attracted towards being with higher sugar level content. Now, if you must have noticed, I have been speaking about mosquitoes in particular because I've taken up the zoonoses that fall within the region of the site, and predominantly the infections in the region are caused by vector mosquitoes. So this entire zoonosis strategy has been conceived using this as an example. More than often, humans are never the meal option for mosquitoes, and we end up being a meal option due to a plethora of natural or anthropogenic factors. So this is what zooprophylaxis is all about. Now, this particular project proposal, crafted on the basis of One Health approach, calls for a united front at a multidisciplinary level, along with the successful implementation of each and every proposed strategy, intervention, policies, and guidelines, as this shall not only help to improve the Gangetic dolphin count, but in the process of doing so, it also shall help to ensure a better quality of human life as well. Now, in the light of the ongoing COVID pandemic, this proposal is indeed of paramount importance due to its scalable nature and the immediate need to pursue landscape development from a pandemic perspective, the resultant being a zoonotically resilient landscape, which does indeed bring me back to where I first started. That is, you do not have to excessively intervene in a landscape to call it landscape architecture. Sometimes the solution to resolving multifaceted issue cycles, as seen in the case of Vikramshila Gangetic Dolphin Sanctuary, may be as simple as just providing room for the river to be itself. And voila, all the problems like flooding, zoonosis, decreasing dolphin count, etc. will be resolved. So last but not the least, I would like to take your leave with an interesting quote by Nikita Malawolu. Quote, maybe zoonoses are like animals, fighting to be the survival of the fittest, trying to face the man who's devastating their homes. Unquote. Thank you.
Thank you so much. How do I address you? Do I address you as Kanchan or Manju?
Kanchan.
Kanchan, yeah. So thank you so much. Sorry for addressing you as Manju earlier.
No issues.
Wow. So I really was impressed with the way you have taken your research, and it was so well structured. And One Health as a sort of a basis, a pivotal basis through which you kind of explored, which was very intriguing. And it is quite alarming to see what is actually happening at Gangetic Plain. It was not only informative, but also the thesis was very gripping as to kind of go through. So thank you so much, Kanchan. Moving forward to the last presentation of today, we have with us Rini Zarewala. Rini is, sorry, one second. Yeah. Rini has studied from Gijubai Patel. I'm sorry, I'm just kind of, give me a second. Yeah.
You can see GCPI.
Yeah, sorry. Hi, Rini. Yeah, so Rini has studied from Gijubhai C. Patel Institute of Architecture, Interior Design and Fine Arts in Surat, and her thesis is titled Rejuvenation of Fragmented Ecological Corridor and Habitat of Avifauna in Kheda region. Rini, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening to all of you. I would like to turn off my camera just for a smooth presentation. I'll turn it on post presentation. Am I audible clearly?
Yes.
Okay. Is it visible, sir?
Yeah.
Sir, is it visible now?
Go ahead.
Yeah. So can one imagine a place where exotic variety of avian species flying all around you and feel of that peace by hearing the chirping of the sound of the birds? One can have a vista where the huge space where the agricultural lands and wetlands which are full with the floating avian species and variety of floaters which are complementing each other. One of the major questions what was raised in my mind when I started my study. So the question was, what is the major role of avifauna and why the presence of avian species are must in ecology? So the avian species plays a vital role, but we are least concerned about the importance of avian species in our ecology. Avian species are the great indicators for the climate change. The presence of the avian species itself represents the climatic condition, and the reduction or the degradation of avian species indicates the change in climate, and they are the triggers about the habitat loss. Migratory species provides the ecological functions, not only breeding grounds, but to non-breeding grounds too. Now, another question raised was why the ecological corridors are needed and what is the migratory bird flyway. So, ecological corridors are the crucial element of ecological network as the corridor helps to maintain or recover certain degree of cohesion, which is in the fragmentation of ecology. So, ecological networks are essential for the long-term survival of biological diversities. We have basically 9 major flyways which provide path to migratory species for the survival of their biological need. India covers 2 major flyways, which are the Central Asian flyways and the East Asian flyways. So this is the map which is showing the route of the Central Asian flyways, and these are the major stopover site of the Central Asian flyways. In this slide, one can see the major stopover site of the India level, and these are the some important bird sanctuary of the Gujarat. So fragmentation and the destruction of habitat due to the human intervention, which is considered one of the major cause of biodiversity loss, which need to be ensured and which need to be addressed to conserve these migratory flyways which is needed for the ecological connection for the long distance seasonal migratory birds and wetlands which are managed for the nature and the people. Gujarat is strategically located between 2 migratory flyways, and so it is called as a strategic bottleneck for the migratory birds. Most of the people are aware of Nal Sarovar as it is major source of avian species in the Gujarat, and it is one of the major Ramsar site for the listed in India. Earlier time, Ahmedabad was the stopover site for the migratory birds, but due to the urbanization and the growth of the city, this urban habitat had a fragmented habitat and they have a loss of habitat. So this migratory route got their discontinuity with the connection of the flyways. So then these migratory birds shifted to the nearby rural habitat where they have a source of ecology, where they have a source of habitat and they get good amount of source for their survivals. As I explained earlier, the Gujarat is the strategic bottleneck for the migratory birds. So here one can see this is the location of Nal Sarovar and this is the location of the study region where these small blue dots are connecting these both source of the habitats. The central map is showing the major land use pattern of this study region, which is Matar Taluka, which is located in a Kheda district, and Kheda is the part of Gujarat state. So here one can see some of the wetlands, some of the water bodies, and the connection of the canals with these wetlands, the hierarchy of road pattern, and the settlement as well. This map is showing the geological condition of the particular study region. This is the soil characteristics of the study region which have been done in a detail. This is the vegetation cover map which is showing the major part is covered under the agriculture field with the combination of marshland, scrubland and the salinity. This map is showing the canal connection, which is the major role, which playing the major role to fill this wetland for the purpose of the for the purpose of the drinking water and the ecological functions. Now, some of the issues I have identified during my study. So, one of the major issue what I have found is the migratory network is as only strong as it is weakest link. If one network is broken, the population can be altered adversely. So here I have tried to show the habitat loss. It can be triggered by the human interference, where one can see this is the habitat in which is covered by the diverse area, and there is a forest area or the vegetation cover. Now it is connecting the avian species and they are providing good habitat. But when human interference is there, the scale of habitat has been decreased, and this is again the trigger for the habitat loss. This section is showing where the abetment was there with the habitat wetlands, which is providing a good ecological sound. But this abetment is used by the local public for their movement and for their local activities. So which is again a trigger for the habitat loss. This section is showing the villagers or the local stakeholders are using this wetland, and they are digging out this wetland for the increasing the capacity of water. So this is again not suitable for the avian species or the aquatic birds. So this is again the major issue which I have identified in my study region. One, but not in a list, I can say the high tension lines are passing through the site, which is the which can be considered as a issue where the birds are sitting on the wire and the high tension power is running through, and it is again the damaging the avian species. These are some of the sections which are showing the current condition of the site and the edge condition of the wetlands. So some of the recommendation as per the issues I have identified. So one can be done by like patch and corridor networks. So where the fragmented patches are there, they can be connected by the corridors and the surrounding can be covered by the buffer zones. The another recommendation what I'm proposing is the habitat which is now using by the local community for their anthropogenic activities can be controlled by providing certain space for the anthropogenic activities, and the habitat spot can be covered by the buffer zone to restore the ecology or to regenerate it. Now the wetlands are, the shoreline of the wetlands are not protected well. So it can be protected by giving the native vegetation and the dense vegetation which can control the human interference for the in the wetlands. One more issue what I have identified is the commercial fishing which is happening within the habitat wetlands. So that can be controlled by providing the fishing ponds. Even this pond can be helped to restore the sedimentation which is coming by the runoff. So that can be helped to restore the water quality, the depth of the water can be restored, and the whole wetland characteristic of wetland can be restored. This is the suitable map which I have identified as per the season. So winter, summer and the monsoon. During the winter, many of the species are traveled from the long distance for their survival. So overwintering is not suitable again for the avian species. So they travel for the their foraging, roosting and the breeding. So these are the some of the potential habitats like marshlands, wetlands, paddy fields and the riparian habitats. These sections are showing the habitats in a different season, like the winter and the summer. During the winter season, many of the species can be found out near the wetland or into the wetland for their foraging and the rest, breathing. In summer season, many of the species can be found out near the agriculture fields because it is already harvested. So it will help to control the insects and pests which are again the harm for the environment. And some of the species are found out in a wetland because the water level will be decreased. So potential habitat can be considered as a marshland also. This area is poor. This area is characterized as a poorly drained mineral soil. So many of the time it has been observed that this area is almost waterlogged, which is suitable for certain species. So many of the species of the study region are permanent marshlands and some of the seasonal marshlands. And paddy fields, which are again suitable for the avian species, which can be considered as a temporary wetland. So this area is considered as a most suitable habitat for the avian species. These are some of the zonals what I have identified after the studying all the layers, the issues what I have identified and the recommendations I have given. So I have come up with the 3 zones like core zone, the buffer zone, and the sustainable zones. So after come up with these zones, I have considered these potential zones should be considered in some categories. So I have given categories like the conservation, upgradation, and the creation. So I'm conserving the core zone, which is already existing most preferable zone. The upgradation will be the stepping stone, which is unseen link between the fragmented habitat and creating the riparian zone, which is fragmented habitat again. So I'm coming to the core zone where one can see 2 major wetlands are there. The Pariej wetland, which is national wetland, and the Nada wetlands. So after taking this core zone, I have taken 3 potential pockets. One is the permanent marshland, which is just adjoining to Pariej Lake and which is already in a conservation by the Gir Foundation and the central government. So they have given some roosted mounts. They have maintained the water quality of this area and they have maintained the edge condition also. The second pocket is again the adjoining wetland or the marshland, we can say, which is nearby the Pariej Lake, the lower side of Pariej Lake. This area is the combination of salinity, the sweet water, the marshland, the scrubland, and the agriculture field. So this is the full, one can say, a proper habitat pocket for the avian species. And this area gets waterlogged during the monsoon too. So it has a mixed ecology. It has a mixed potential for the regenerating or the giving the certain potential for the more ecological value. Now the pocket 3, which is the Nada Lake, and I have taken this pocket just to give the overview, like it is also having the agriculture, canal, the marshland, and the wetland. For the pocket 3, I have taken further detailed study. So this area is the Nada Lake. Nada Lake is again the combination of deep water and the shallow water. Even it has a marshland, saline land, agriculture field, and the aqua agriculture practice. So I have taken this area for the further intervention by providing the certain roosting mound, proposing the scrubland, and proposing the woodland for the better connectivity of the agriculture and the wetland. So here I have given some proposal for the vegetation also, which is native and which is again suitable for this particular patch. This is my proposed section where one can see there are the deep water, where the deep water level is there, where I have proposed some roosting mound, which will help to avian species for the resting, and some of the shallow water will be used by the aquatic vegetation, avian species also. Then the hierarchy of marshland, the scrubland, and the woodland, which will encourage the lost ecology to regenerate, and it will encourage some of the mammals also for the to interact in this scrubland and the wetlands, the woodlands. Some of the policies and guidelines I have taken for the core area. So first of all, the abetment which is there, the foreside of the wetlands, which should be removed and which should be replaced by the hierarchical vegetation, which is again suitable for the avian species. Commercial fishes should be restricted for the core zone, which is again not suitable for the avian species. It should be allowed in a village pond, or the commercial fishing pond can be proposed. Water and soil quality should be checked in the certain time period. Encroachment like the aquatic farming or the aqua agriculture should be restricted in a core area. The anthropogenic activity can be restricted. The agriculture fields which is nearby these wetlands should be in a control and it should not allow the crash cropping practice. The high tension line can be go underground. The motorized boats are not allowed in a core zone. These all policies and guidelines I have given for the core zones. Now coming to the upgradation. So I'm upgrading the stepping stone, and this the upgradation zone is also covering 4 major wetlands, which are Traj, Heranj, Kathoda, and Nagrama. Creating the stepping stone will help to link the fragmented habitat and connecting through the unseen corridor of the wetlands and agriculture fields, which will provide space for the foraging and the roosting. Here I have taken the Traj wetland for my detailed study. So again, Traj wetland is also a combination of deep water and shallow water, and which is divided naturally by the some settlement of the mud. So I have taken that in my consideration for the further intervention. So deep water is also populated by the crocodiles, and this shallow water is not so much suitable or not preferable by the avian species, because it is not having some spaces for the roosting. So here I will propose some roosting mounts over here, and this separation will be remain same, so that the crocodile will not harm the avian species and they can have their own ecology. And the edge of the this wetland will be covering by the native species, which will help to terrestrial bird for their nesting in the resting part. So here some of the recommendation I have given for the upgradation also. Then coming to the creation. So I'm creating the riparian corridor in the current situation where the many of the species found in the study region, but the riparian edge is not taken in consideration due to the undeveloped edge condition. So species prefer scheduled corridor. So Vetrag River get dried up during the summer season and it becomes like a channel. And where the meeting or the junction of the Sabarmati and the Vetrag River, so that portion, that potential zone is zone 1 over here. So where there is a island which is created by the natural, but it is vacant, one can see in an image. So I have considered this island and I have converted or the proposed a woodland space over this island. So it will help, or it will help avian species for their resting part, and even it will encourage avian species to have a to restore their ecology or regenerate their ecology. So this edge condition also I have proposed with the help of the scrubland and the woodland in a hierarchy. But this area is highly saline area or the mixing of the salinity. So here I have proposed some hylophytes which I have listed over here, which are soil tolerant and which can be grown in any condition or any soil. So here I have proposed the biosaline agroforestry too, and the phytoremediations also I have proposed for the particular riparian corridors. This is zone 2, which is Vetrag River, and again it is having a large riverbed which is vacant and which is actually a potential, can be a potential zone by proposing certain species, certain vegetations. So in detail, one can see in a section of the section 1 is showing the zone 1, which is the bed section. So here I have given the woodland, I'm proposing the woodland. So right now the condition is where the ecology is just like a nothing. And if I'm proposing certain the scrubland edge or the riparian edge, so I can encourage the species to come up, and this whole area can become a suitable habitat for the avian species who are traveling to the Nal Sarovar or who are coming back to the Nal Sarovar. So this can be a resting point for them and even the suitable habitat where they get food and the breathing spot. This area is more suitable as the Sabarmati river is having the sewage connection, and this river is quite polluted. So it is also good for the avian species to get the food, which is again the potential for the avian species. The section 2, which is the section of the pocket 2, which is showing the vacant land over here, one can see in an image, one can see. So here I have again proposed the riparian edge, which is the hierarchical plantation vegetation, which will the riparian edge will merge to the scrubland, and the scrubland will have a core zone, and then it will merge to the agriculture field. So the connection of the agriculture field and the river, which can be happened by proposing the riparian edge and the scrubland.
Rini, you almost 20 minutes.
Yes, sir, I'm about to wrap up.
Yeah. Okay.
So here is my vision for the 20 years, what I have planned right now. So the current condition is the present scenario where the minimal amount of the species, minimum amount of the vegetation is there. And one can see the ecology, which is not even the considerable. So after the proposing these plantations, it will grown up after the 10 years, and it will become like a scrubland, and it will encourage or the invite some of the avian species to regenerate the ecology. And after the 20 years, the 25 years, this area will become like a dense woodland, and the hierarchical plantation will happen, and this will encourage the ecology, or the whole area can be active for the ecological habitat. So I'm concluding my presentation with the three potential zones, like the conservation, the upgradation, and the creation, where one can have a rejuvenation of the lost ecology, what is actually needed right now in current scenario. Thank you so much, sir.
You can stop sharing. Thank you, Rini. That was very intriguing. And I must say it was a very honest presentation. And I say honest because it comes from this idea of, we always in the profession try to create a win-win situation. And whether we want it or not, somewhere we bring a human-centric angle. And you were very unapologetic about the fact, and you were completely devout to the birds and the entire ecosystem there without even talking about the humans at all. And that, I think, takes a degree of maturity and sincerity as well. And so I was appreciating that. And also honest, because I think those crayon-like sketches which were there, which had that childlike quality to it, and they were brilliant in my view. So I think it was very selfless and generous as a study. Thank you so much, Rini. And with that, we complete our three presentations for the day. And wow, because it just reminds me of this essay from Makhag, which is half a century old, City and Countryside. I think it's the first essay in Design with Nature, if I'm not wrong. But today, things remain pretty much the same, and it only, the city is transformed to urban agglomeration and the limits have expanded, and a countryside is sort of replaced with ecology in this study, which gives hope for the future of the profession. The presenters were unafraid of the scale. They were foolishly involved in a way. And I think that's something very refreshing about this entire presentation. So with that, we move to the moderators. I request the presenters and the moderators to switch on your videos. And I would like to start with Saurabh first today.
Yes, thank you. Am I audible?
Yes.
Right. I have to say that this has been a most satisfying session. And I'm really pleased to see work of this caliber. It's work of extraordinary caliber, and particularly for you, Rini. I mean, I heard you being introduced as an architect, and I'm really curious that are you an architect or a landscape architect, or both?
I'm both.
Where did you study? I didn't catch that, perhaps.
Sir, I have completed my graduation from this GAT, Surat, and I have done my master's from the GCPIA, VNSG University, Surat.
I see. Right. And who was your guide?
Sir Vishwanath, Professor Vishwanath.
Right. Kashikar.
Yes.
I see. No wonder. So, all three of your of the theses that we have seen today are remarkable. And I say that after having seen thesis for nearly 20 years, or perhaps more than 20 years. So what struck me most about your thesis, in addition to the work that the others had also presented, is that there was an acknowledgement of so when we talk about anthropomorphic issues or anthropological anthropogenic activities, we essentially mean in a student thesis, we essentially mean the negative impacts of what people are doing upstream, right? But you will understand that all of our ecologies are not in fact pure ecologies. all of our ecologies, all the spaces, all the natural systems that we have, whether it's the Vembanad Lake, it's the wetlands of the Vembanad Lake, it's the wetlands around the Vembanad Lake, it's the canals, the networks, it's the Gangetic system. All of these are intrinsically human-altered systems. They're complex systems, and their complexity has only increased because of the kind of shaping, the kind of activities that have taken place in these landscapes over millennia. It's not a matter of 20, 30 years. These are all landscapes that have been shaped. They have shaped us, and we have shaped them back. And it is perhaps your thesis, Renee's thesis, is remarkable because it actually acknowledges to a large extent that.
You've gone on mute.
Okay, how much did you miss?
Last 5 seconds.
All right, fine. So not much. So all of Gujarat landscapes, just as Kerala landscapes, just as the landscapes of central Kerala around Kochi, or perhaps to a slightly lesser extent, the landscapes around the Ganga River, Ganges River in Bhagalpur, are all human-altered and human-created landscapes. And it is important to recognize this fact, because if we do not recognize this fact, we will leave a significant part of our heritage out of the frame. This leaves the frame. And if it leaves the frame, you can't engage with it. So it's very interesting that all of these, the works that we've discussed today have taken on themes that are actually incredibly challenging. I struggle to find words to describe the kind of challenge that you've actually mounted through your studies. So I think Kanchan's, is that right? Is that the right address? Kanchan? So Kanchan's address, yeah. So Kanchan's thesis was perhaps the most ambitious, and because it was ambitious, perhaps it suffers from a certain disconnect, because I'm seeing the slides and I'm looking at the braids of the river, I'm looking at the river channels, I'm looking at the river landscapes, but I can't touch it. It's still a little distant. I don't know what that thing is in front of me. I don't know, I don't know that how's the life cycle of the dolphins tied to the fishermen or the boatmen of Bhagalpur district. I don't know that yet. So it's still somewhat distant. And for you, I mean, because you did a lot of your study through sections, and you did a lot of your study through actually sitting. It's very easy to understand your landscapes because they're real and we can visualize them easily. So Kanchan's thesis was very ambitious, therefore it's very satisfying. Your thesis is one can sense the grain, one can sense the feel and the smell of the salt of the earth of Vetrak River, and to me that is important, because the great tool that we have for conservation today, and the most important. So all three of these theses have engaged with the two most important drivers of global change, or the most important forces of change amongst three. So there are three principal threats to humanity, the threats to the world as we know them today. And all three theses have engaged with two of those three threats. So the one is the collapse of biodiversity, the collapse of ecological systems. And the second is, the impacts of pollution. And because these are multidisciplinary, these themes can span disciplines. I'm very happy to note that you've actually taken into your work is actually transdisciplinary. All three of you have engaged in remarkable work. You've tried to go beyond the limitations and the disciplinary knowledge that we have given you as academics, and you've ventured far into the field. And in learning about other fields and other forms of knowledge, you have enriched yourselves and your thesis. So all three of you, congratulations. Very, very nice. that pretty much sums up what I wanted to say. And I would like to end by saying that actually this kind of work, I'll say two things. One, that this kind of work is only going to become more important in the future. So, the more we teach our students to think beyond disciplinary bounds, the more impactful their work is going to be, the more impactful our profession is going to be, the more real issues our profession is going to deal with in the future, in already in the present, but even more so in the future. Because the future is necessarily a place in which disciplines really do not stand any sort of, do not stand in silos. We have, and you've taken that brave step. All three of these theses that we've seen today are very satisfying because they've taken that first step to breaking those silos. So that is the first thing. And the second thing I wanted to say was that our real tool in doing this transdisciplinary work is actually, it bridges, it goes beyond also landscape architecture and enters into this domain of landscape planning. And landscape planning is an incredibly powerful tool if used correctly. And the premise of landscape planning is that because land use change and because the impacts of the activities of people on land use negatively impact or impact in significant ways areas that are far beyond the physical boundaries of where those changes are actually taking place. Therefore, landscape planning requires to look at a much wider canvas. And by doing that, we are able to to bring front and center those issues and those solutions that possibly lie within newer approaches, within approaches that span disciplines and span sectors. And therefore, landscape works to bridge. It works as a bridge. The analogy of a bridge to bridge disciplines, to bridge sectors, to bridge contested claims on landscape. And this, to me, is the most satisfying aspect of today's wonderful session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Saurabh, for your comments and thoughts. I think they have a lot to take from that. Before I move forward, my request to the audience, if you have any questions, then do put that into the chat box and I'd be more than happy to read that out. And over to you, Mangesh. You are on mute.
Yeah. Santosh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the invite again. And I must say, Kritika, Kanchan, and Rini have, concluded this thesis open day session with an amazing statement for the entire audience. I congratulate them mainly because, not because of their wonderful works. You may not realize, all three of you all, what you all are doing or what you all have contributed to the entire forum of 60 minutes. Your thesis basically reminds me of the times of 1972 when our mentor, late Professor Ravindra Ban, actually brought the profession of landscape architecture into the country. And the content of getting the profession with a holistic approach actually includes, A to Z of what you're saying right now, and that is one of the biggest statement. You're actually like, catching hold of everybody in the building industry or all the stakeholders at a gunpoint and asking, come on, what are you all doing in the industry? I'm talking about industry, right? Academics is on one side, but the kind of statements you have made, is actually making us feel, wow, where are we going? What are we doing? What are we missing out on? Are we doing justice to the kind of content which we started in 1972 when the profession came or emerged as a professional course in the country? And that is the kind of thing, all three of you have contributed to our profession. Whoever is listening to the content with the kind of sensitivity that you have, expressed in the entire 20-minute sessions is really needs huge amount of appreciation, I must tell you. Basically, on one side, we have, as I was talking yesterday, landscape planning, and on the other side is landscape architecture. But the content of ecology, the content of ecosystems which are being somehow taking backseat when it comes to industry connect, because of huge amount of industry pressures or because of commercial activities which are happening in the industry. You have actually opened up a Pandora box, which basically tells you, that yes, you cannot have landscapes without what you are presenting. So Kritika, Kanchan, and Rini, hats off to the entire research work. For architects generally to do something like this is not easy, because it has to come through passion, and there has to be a lot of love for what you're doing. In this case, your client is not corporation, or it is not some a corporate client or an institute. You are representing the biodiversity. You are representing ecosystem, and that is your client in this case. And to represent them who cannot speak to you, who cannot talk to you, is an amazing achievement, and to understand them. And that process I could see in the kind of slides you have shown in the last 60 minutes kind of session. You like basically you are fighting a war for a silent user who's not able to speak. And that's one of the biggest challenge, which you're telling the masses, you're telling the policy makers, you're telling the professionals who are around you, that yes, yesterday somebody had a title, reviving forgotten grounds, and this applies here also today. The concepts of ecology or issues related to ecology that you're talking about are exactly going through this title, reviving forgotten grounds. In most of the landscape plans that happen in the industry, academia, it happens, but in an industry, this is taking a back seat. And basically, you're trying to say to the profession about the contents, about the kind of things that you have said, that yes, these are need of the hour also. Especially Kritika, when she spoke about, a very extensive study about design evolution, the mosaic patterns which happen, the tidal flows, or even the noise levels which are happening in urban habitats, where you need silent and no silent kind of activities. You also spoke about improvements for management strategies in terms of water, vegetation, build context, or habitat. It's not only one landscape architect's duty here to create this kind of projects or do justice to projects. There are multiple authorities which are linked around this planet, which are like maybe the water resource department, it is the biodiversity department, wetland boards, or environmental department, the land use town planning boards, all basically come, and they all need to be tutored through the kind of data you are presenting through your improvement and management strategies. Even for an example, for a water canal on left and right side, there are shoulders. And you mentioned about the level of pollutions in terms of throwing of garbage, getting into sewage water. And that basically affects the kind of aquamarine life which is inside the water body. These are not just landscapes. They're not, you are understanding that because you're talking to the user group which is inside the water, which is above the water, right, which is flying over these waterways. So that's the kind of thing which we have done here. So how do you create those, or how important it is to create those resilient landscapes along this kind of corridors, along this kind of restoration processes in an urban habitat? Today what is urban may not be the same, might have not been the same maybe 20 years back or 30 years back. That particular time, the build form and the density was completely different. But today you're forced to do it, keeping in mind next 50 years what it would be. Imagine they're all deteriorating and disappearing from the entire corridor where you can't even fly because of this kind of issues. So, Kritika, lovely work presented. You also mentioned about depth of open habitats and micro habitats. Very sensitive observation about the nesting patterns. Everybody talks about sustainable habitats, creating sustainable habitats for people. But who thinks about resilient and sustainable habitats for this kind of elements that you're suggesting? And that's something very nice. Even the way they land, the way they come and nest, the way they come and be around during rains, during summers, during winters, during day, during shade loving, or during night. So there are very interesting solutions that you have come up with. And based on that, you're creating a geometry and a plan form. It's a time for you to ask, is the right kind of geometry, is the right kind of typology created by you for those habitats? Or we are just making graphical representations in the industry on a plan form. We are creating those fancy graphical patterns and says, now this is a habitat. This is the oxygen park for you. This is the greens for you. Or are you doing some justice to naturalistic patterns which are needed for actual habitat? It's like a villager staying in a farmland, being forced to stay in a 30th story kind of thing where he feels suffocated without understanding what that farmer is going through, where he should be, what is a comfortable habitat for him. So Kritika, lovely work in the entire exercise from your end. Then we had, Kanchan, very challenging, exercise that you have taken up, where you spoke about, largely restoring the hydrological nexus, which is the important thing right now. Right now, water means it should be in a mineral bottle. Nobody is bothered about what happens, beyond it. What happens to your backyard? Everybody wants their green courts or reservoirs very clean and neat and clean through best of the best stormwater drainage. But once it comes outside your plot boundary, I'm least bothered about what's happening to the rest of the world. And you have touched upon that nexus which you spoke of, whether it is in terms of disaster-based floodplain area or temporary, areas where it gets flooded. Very interestingly, you spoke about decoding of rivers, which you never hear of actually, with the kind of impacts and the way you revolved your entire study with the health component. Health component are not only human beings, you touched upon the animals and you touched upon the environment also. And to understand health of an animal without even getting involved, being a landscape architect is something very, very challenging and very sensitive. I must appreciate you're using for both, working for both the user groups in this case. That's very good thing. Ecological maturity that you showed into your entire design, about resilience, about zoonotics, what you mentioned. And rightly, you also gave a way forward direction to implementation network, which is very important. Industry does make brochures right now and says, I am green building certified and so, and glorifying on a hoarding or a brochure on a website. But you actually spoke of how to get this thing into an implementation framework, both by getting community involvement and also by getting a timeline based strategies. So how do you do that particular thing in terms of both naturalistic processes and ecosystems? Hats off to you for both touching upon the agro-based industry also and the natural wetland industry also. Next is about Rini Zariwala. Very interesting, points what you mentioned about in terms of the kind of wetland influences you mentioned. We have trails for everybody, but nobody talks about the trails and the walking corridors or flying corridors for the kind of bird life that you have around, the kind of bird flyways that you have spoken to. It's amazing. We generally see it only for aircraft. All over the globe we see the airways and air traffic things going from here to there, but to read something like this through a landscape architect's view, it's amazing. And while doing that, I like the sensitivity which you also spoke about, the radiation coming from the wired digital model which is over our cities right now, the kind of 3Gs, 4Gs, radiations, and things like that happening. How difficult it is for a health of a bird to fly with those radiations around. Imagine the kind of vibrations and the jerks he gets. But you are trying to locate and creating very safe kind of corridors and flyways for them at so and so height. That's very interesting. And to do that, what is the kind of strategy? How are you trying to create that suitable habitat for them, not only when they land, but even to go from place to place also, both in terms of winters also and in terms of summers also. The kind of making of a master plan that you presented with buffer zones on one side, core zones on the other side, sustainable zones on the other side. In hospitality industry, you have the guests, the recreational activity, the parking lot, the utility zones. But here you have touched upon something which doesn't exist in our plans in the building industry, and 80% of the stakeholders take it for granted. Why should I even think of all this? They are remembered once in a while during a bird walk or a bird festival. not during day-to-day life. So through landscape architects work, whether it is a shallow water based water body or polluted water body or noise based highways which are there, or the core. I liked your summation line where you said conserve, upgrade, and create. I mean, I hope all the birds appreciate what you're doing for them. It's very interesting. But quite interestingly, in all three cases, what I could see is there is a bottom line, which is right now having a huge global reference, and that is, you must have seen on 5th of June, on World Environment Day, the global theme was ecosystem restoration. And that has come through some kind of exercise, some kind of prevailing conditions which you are going through, which you started on day one. The kind of ecosystem restoration theme has come through some kind of homework which has been done. And I can see that all three of you all in your thesis are exactly moving in that particular direction, where, I mean, ecosystem restoration may sound very fashionable on a forum, but how you actually study it, how you analyze it, and for whom do you address it, and in reality, what is the implementation plan that you have to make it successful? That is one of the biggest challenge here. I don't know if it is a coincidence or it is planned today. Today seems to be World Migratory Day, also World Day, right? I mean, I don't know how it just summed up or whether it is planned, and celebrating something like that, what you're talking in today's date, for all of them, is really a wonderful thing. I must say, though academics is on one side and architectural and landscape practice is on the other side, you have helped and connected, a chord which is right now 80% on academic side and 20% on practice side. And I'm sure hearing what you are saying in terms of your policies, in terms of your planning techniques that you have proposed in terms of ecology, I'm sure if not 2030, 2080 becoming 80-20, at least even if we reach about 50% of addressal, it will be a big success for entire profession in the country. And we will be able to tell somebody like, who doesn't exist, I mean, is no more now, Professor Ravindra Bhan would have been very happy to talk to you all, because we know how he basically, conceptualized the whole course, for the country. And from the West, from Makar's site planning assignments, how he brought it to India and what was the perspective of getting it into the entire Asian subcontinent. I'm sure you would have been very happy looking at all this. And again, hats off to you. Don't stop at this. Try, keep on translating these design ideas towards younger generation, which is following you. And not only younger generation, people who have even there doing best of the best practices in the country must know you are actually catching hold of them by the neck and saying, come on, please do something for them. And that's one of the biggest challenge and a box that you have opened up to move forward in this. I once again thank Isola Bangalore for having organized this. I'm very happy with the outcome of the contents of the thesis, and this thesis is just not, say 4 months work. I mean, it's actually opened up a new dimension to Indian profession of landscape architecture and planning. Yeah, wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mangesh. And what was very interesting for me was that I beg to differ a bit on what you said, that it is 80% academic and 20%. But I somehow feel that, while it's an academic project, it was very well rooted. And that actually is perhaps a way forward, where when you are rooted into a sort of the situation that is there, the context that is there, the conditions that are there, and you understand them sensitively, it allows you to smoothly transition between academia and practice. I think that is where I felt very interesting about all the three theses of today. I had one question to the three presenters, and whichever order you would want to go, feel free to jump in. As a student, when you are working on a project, there is always that side temptation to jump into the design. And here it demanded a certain degree of restraint, where you had to hold yourself before actually jumping into the design. In fact, in some extent, there was no design that was actually required. It was only about sensitively touching certain things and tweaking them. And I think that was very interesting. Was there actually a sort of a temptation for you to go forward and design? How did you hold yourself? Was your guide constantly, leashing you to to stop from jumping forward? Or what was the thing that happened through? Because I'm really curious to know what was the process in all practical sense. So feel free to jump in. Who would like to go first?
So in my case, it was like we knew about the 6 months time, and we had to make the clear methodology of what all to be done and in what order. And I knew that only after proper research work and sorting that I would be able to design anything, and otherwise the design would not have any justification. As landscape architects, we are not aware of many of the ecological things and more about the habitats. And we had to go through a lot of information from various professionals. And we also wanted a proper justification for everything we made. And also proper sources was important. Like we could not say anything that was not relevant. So proper sources from proper journals and speaking to people. So that was done. So only after that process that we could do something about the design. So in my case, it was this exact same process that I explained in the presentation. It was the same.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Am I audible? Yes, sir. So in my case, I didn't find it too hard to restrain myself because I'm quite a research-oriented person when it comes to approaching any project. I like to start off with good old-fashioned research before I jump in and bring any solutions. And as I mentioned earlier, my thesis was a continuation of my dissertation. So I knew the impact of the project as a whole beforehand in general. So what was needed more was I needed to imply those understanding into my thesis before I come up with any solution. And I'm really glad that I did that, because when I did so, that is when I actually came to know one very crucial and fundamental thing. That is generally when we approach any river for that matter, or let's take Ganga river for that instance, more than often the riverfront projects that happen, the river is treated just like a river. It's just a single stretch or transit or conduit that just flows and has water in it. But in my case, when I actually researched and read more, that is when I came to know that the stretch that flows within my sanctuary extent, it's not just a normal river, it's a braided river. And braided rivers are not seen or recognized anywhere in India apart from, say, maybe Brahmaputra. Ganga, the stretch that flows from my side till a portion in West Bengal, it's actually a braided river, and that has a huge role to play when you propose any manner of interventions. So since I found that bit out, it became very easy to solve the issues that are prevalent in that area. So just by finding that, I was able to give so and so solutions, and it finally helped to increase the dolphin count. Now, if I had just focused on doing XYZ factors to just preserve the dolphins, I would only be protecting the dolphins, and it might work, but it will be very temporary because the other issues are still pending and they are not sorted. So if I solve the issue of ensuring that the braided river stays in the way it's supposed to, everything is getting knocked off there. So I feel that was what that is possible only through good solid research. So it was kind of easy for me, I would say.
Thank you. And Rini, to you.
So when I started, like this is just 4 or 5 months of work. Then due to the pandemic, we were not allowed to go everywhere or interact anybody. So when I started about the topic finalization or the synonyms, synopsis. So I started with the avifauna, but I was not clear about the migratory bird and the residential bird, to be very frank, in the beginning stage. But then I started reading the research paper, and when I visited the Gear Foundation, so they opened up the whole scenario in front of me. And when I visited the site, the Kheda region, so they are actually started working to restore this ecology. They are aware of the issues, and they are actually need someone who can lead them. And I have started little bit help from my side to give some ideas. And there is an organization who is already working for the conservation of Sarus crane. So these all factors pushed me, and they encouraged me for the this intervention. Then I come up with the design level, and I choose to design a wetland. But after the looking at the master level, I thought of if I design one particular wetland, I will not give justification to my the whole process of research. So then I came up with the whole master layout, and then I went for the zoning part. If I design a wetland, then I'm not doing justice to other wetlands, which are again important for the habitats. So then I thought of to go for the strategical policies and the overall the planning process for the whole area, instead of taking the any chunk or the any selected zone. And then after communication with the local stockholders over there, they also raise some of the issues which are actually we are not considering right now. Like when I visited the site, it was almost a winter, nearer the January. But the issue was the climatic condition was not so preferable for the avian species. So they said ki this time we have less amount of birds has visited because of the temperature of the particular region. So that was the clicking point for me to process for the thesis in terms of the overall strategical planning for the whole region, rather than taking just a patch for the detailed design part. Like I can design one wetland, but it was not so much justification for the whole issues what I've identified at a larger level. So that was the whole process what I have started from the discussion with my guide, my colleagues, and one of my friend who is IFS. He is also pushed me, and first of all he raised the question in front of me before I started my thesis, that what should we do to restore this ecology where the birds are coming, the large number of birds are coming, but we are helpless to increase that number of species, and some of the species are threatened or some of the near are the threatened, and some of the species are not visiting nowadays. So that all points started clicking in my mind, that what should I do and what should I like what all things I can help to regenerate this whole ecological cycle which is getting lost. So these all factors were the helping hand for me to go to this conclusion part.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Can I just come in one point?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Since you are on the wetland, what Rini mentioned, you must be aware that entire country right now, since last 3 years, have started this new process of mapping all the wetlands in the country under Wetland Authority Board, under Ministry of Environment and Forest. But your thesis basically gives them a direction. What next after mapping? And I think what three of you have done is basically it guides, with certain kind of set of parameters and guidelines is what needs to be done beyond this. As of now, they have left from the central act. They have told every state government to mark and make their own guidelines in terms of, types of wetlands, whether it is an urban area or whether it is completely ecological sensitive wetland, or it is like in the middle kind of thing. Then based on the developments around all four sides of the age zones, whether it is the setback should be 50 meters or 100 meters. So it's complete like a no development zone. And then beyond this particular buffer zone, there is something called zone of influence. You must have heard about it, right? So guidelines from your thesis are very well, giving a direction to this zone of influence in terms of pollution levels, in terms of enhancement of stormwater drainage channels, in terms of creating biodiversity of all those. I think these two documents of your thesis and the process of wetland by Government of India also needs to be looked at with some kind of integration where it's win-win situation for both, because many of them might have not even thought about all these points. It's like just a notified map which says like touch me not kind of area in terms of wetlands. But what next after mapping? This is something what you all three of you are doing in this entire exercise, which will give them a direction, right? They are mentioning a policy, but how to implement a policy with what kind of sensitivity, which all three of you all have actually done it, right? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Saurabh, your final thoughts?
Yeah, thank you so much. I have to, I'll say again that it's been very satisfying. And while I dwelt a little bit more at length on Renee's work, because it was fresh and it was, it was right in front of us, I don't mean to take anything away from the other two. And that the Kritika's thesis is remarkable because of, the kind of, I really enjoyed the design that you had proposed and the way that you had proposed strategies for a very important wetland area. I was also taken by the kind of breadth of vision that both you and Kanchan, employed. The fact that you actually took the trouble to talk to many different people from different disciplines. I've already covered this point, but I'd like to do it more because this point can't be stressed enough. That most of the most important work that we will do, that you will do as young professionals, I hope, will be in learning from other professionals, from other disciplines, from other domains of knowledge, because it will all come to bear on your own work, and it will all help you to develop your own capacity, your own capability. So we've seen 3 theses of extraordinary caliber, and compliments to your guides. I'm sure that this has come about through a process of, through the rigor of real, and the kind of work that the guides have done on you. So it's very good, and it's very, very satisfying to see. And I would like to suggest that please look at please don't think of landscape architecture as a small profession in which now you've got to, it's going to be an office and it's going to be a certain kind of work. It's certainly not going to be a certain kind of work. It's really satisfying to see the kind of conviction that you have in the work that you've done, and I hope to God that you will take it forward. So congratulations to all 3 of you, and cheers. Thank you so much, ISOLA Bangalore, for a wonderful and a very enriching 2 days. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. With that, before we complete, this was not planned, but I think even the acknowledgement goes to the people in the background. So I would like to see if Abhinaya, Prachita, and Prasanna could come online. I think Prachita is not online. I couldn't see, but if you could switch on your cameras, and Rashmi, if you could come online as well. Yeah, Abhinaya is here. I'm not sure if Prasanna, are you here?
Yes, I am.
Yes, great. Prachita is not online, but I think all the 6 theses were very intriguing. They were phenomenal in their own respect, and they challenged the normative. They asked questions. They were thriving to inquire, and that is why you are here presenting. I don't mean to just say that to motivate you or anything, but I honestly am thankful to all of you for coming here and presenting your work. Uh, it was completely refreshing to really listen to you, to learn from you, and to take certain pointers back, which I hope that will take the profession forward. Rashmi, thank you so much for organizing this, and you have managed it pretty well. I don't know if Dilip can, I couldn't see Dilip, but I think he is the host managing the show from the background. So Dilip is a silent person who does an amazing job all the time. He is impeccable with things, organizes everything in a bespoke manner. So thank you, Dilip, for doing that. And thank you, Isola, for maintaining the standard and in fact surpassing it this year again, and we hope that version 7 will be way better than this. So fantastic, and thank you each one of you for participating, people here, and as well as there are listeners on YouTube, for being here on a Saturday evening, giving you a couple of hours to be with us and to listen to these presentations. I hope there's a great takeaway for all of us. So thank you. Over to you, Rashmi.
Thank you, Santesh. It was indeed an intriguing session. Thank you, participants, for presenting your work and showing all your enthusiasm. I would like to extend my thanks to Mangesh and Saurabh sir for spending your valuable time with us. And a special thank you to Dilip for managing and coordinating both the sessions. And of course, a big shout out to Maithili and Sachin for all their inputs and being there with us. I would like to conclude Thesis Open Day version 6. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All the presenters celebrate biodiversity tonight.
But thank you all. Thank you. With that, we can complete our session. Hey, Rashmi and Dilip, thank you.
Santesh, thank you so much.
YouTube